Greetings everyone. Today I'm going to be reading from chapter 7 of The Map of Consciousness. The truly great teachers and teachings effulge from states of consciousness at 600 and higher. In religious history, the mystic has been both revered and persecuted. The mystic's authority stems from the presence, the divine I of the self, the divine I am presence. Now, of course, as we sadly know, mystics were often considered sacrilegious by the corrupt authoritarian church regimes of the medieval era, the Dark Ages, where often a lot of mystics, mainly women and men, wise women, wise men, were sadly put to death, burnt, or cast into a river with a stone tied to their legs, crucified, executed, branded heretics, etc., all that nonsense. But the state of the mystic is not an achievement. It is not even a person, though we commonly refer to the mystic as a person. It is a state of consciousness beyond personhood, for in that state there is no longer a me. So basically, it's learning to accept that you are, instead of using the ego's expression of mine or my body or my house, you sort of step away from that, and you come to realize it's just simply consciousness. You're just simply part of the same source creator consciousness as every other living being, everything in existence. You are that you are, and we are the universe looking back at itself. We are the universe learning and studying from itself. We are that divine cosmic consciousness learning from itself, studying itself, and looking back at itself. When we look up at the stars at night, we are looking back virtually at the magnificent glory that is in fact us. That is us. We are part of that. We're part of divine source creator, part of the stars, the galaxies, the planets, part of all living beings and one another. And the witness silently observes that all things within a state of stillness and peace. In that state, walking through the woods, one is aware that the trees are alive. All life is shimmering forth, worshipful of the presence of divinity and very conscious and aware of it. The universe is conscious. The tree is vibrantly aware that it is in the presence of divinity. Because of its nature, because of the source of its creation, which is the same source as one's own creation, the tree knows its own, for life reverences life. The tree is part of source creator consciousness, just as we are. Technically, the state begins at level 600, a state of infinite peace. It was the state the state of the great ascended masters like Yeshua and the Buddha and Krishna and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, Kuan Yin, Krishna, etc. In Sanskrit, it is called Satchitananda. The preceding states are those of love, joy, and ecstasy. When one lets go of any attachment to those states, which are exquisite, there is a state of infinite timeless peace, illumination, stillness, and completion. Peace, which calibrates at 600 on the map of consciousness, is a state of revelation, all-inclusive and totally intrinsic, as it stems from within. It is motionless as the essence of divinity unfolding in all-encompassing emergence and effluence. It is also silent and wordless. Transfigured, the mystic realizes that this stillness of peace is one's true identity, which is not linear and harmonious with all of life. It has no location, for it is totality. Unifying beyond description, there is no me that is separate from you, and separateness disappears in the revelation of the radiance of oneness. So what the world calls enlightenment, then, is a state in which the former personal identity and all that has been believed about it has been erased, removed, transcended, and dissolved. The particular has been replaced by the universal qualities. By the universal. Qualities have been replaced by essence. The linear has been replaced by the non-linear, and the discrete has been replaced by the unlimited. Time has become allness and foreverness. Intention has been replaced by spontaneity, and the limiting perception of duality has been removed as the radiance of oneness illuminates reality and the truth of non-duality. The essence of divinity stands forth in self-revelation. Mentation has ceased, and in the silence the knowingness of omniscience radiates forth unasked. The motion has been replaced by peace. So once we learn to let go of the thinking mind's perceptions, judgments, criticisms, definitions, etc., we let go of my or mine and all that, the ego's perception of life, and we embrace the oneness that we are part of this beautiful cosmic divine consciousness that exists within all living beings and permeates the entire universe. Then that's where we find true peace. That's where we'd find true joy. It's basically surrendering all our fears, surrendering it, everything, all our limitations to this oneness, to otherwise known as God, to the source creator consciousness. And this basically it is surrendering all the lower emotions and our fears to this divine source of love, basically divine love in all its perfection, its beauty. That is what God is. God is love. That is what source creator consciousness is. It is love, pure, perfect, unconditional, divine love. In the mystic state, the understanding comes about in a totally different, non-linear way. It does not come about as a result of reason. Rather, the understanding is an effulgence, a revelation that requires no thinkingness at all, and not even any religious knowledge. So now David here David mentions here that he goes going back to his childhood when he was trapped in that blizzard and burrowed his way into a snowbank. Then out of nowhere, came a profound infinite radiance of love beyond all imagination, beyond human love, timeless and eternal, no beginning and no end. It was closer to me than my own self, closer to what I had ever thought of myself or my personal identity as myself. That infinite love was the core of who I was and had always been. It was an eternal foreverness. In that state, you realize what you are is eternal, infinite love. The reality of that which you are is no different from infinite, absolutely perfect love, with no beginning and no end. That is a revelation of the truth of your own existence. That is the truth of everyone's existence. That which you are is infinite love. That which you are is infinite love, which has existed forever and has no beginning and no end. All that is needed right now is for you to realize that. Exactly. And basically, this mystic state is that of surrendering to the self, to the capacity of divinity within to reveal itself. And it reveals itself when it is comically propitious to do so, not necessarily when you want it to happen. It can happen at very inconvenient times. You may find yourself completely incapacitated, sitting there in a state of bliss on a rock, unable to get up, move, or leave. The police may come and cart you off to the hospital, but in that state you have no say in the matter. A mystic who has realized about the self and who then stays in the world to serve a teaching function is referred to as a sage. Self-realization on the map of consciousness encompasses the levels 700 and up, with Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj as examples of the sage. In that state one sees the world in its essence. The sage tells you the world you see does not exist. This statement confounds the ordinary mind, which assumes that its perceptions of the world are exactly the way the world is, but the sage sees beyond perception, which is based on the illusion of separateness, and instead witnesses the unity of all phenomena. The expressions of the rain may look like separate raindrops. However, the rain is one. The rain is part of source, creator consciousness. So, in politics there's always a division, in mainstream human society, like there always has to be a victim and a perpetrator, and the oppressed and the oppressor. But in actual fact, In contrast, the mystic sees the unity and the truth beyond causation, beyond perception, which is emergence. Emergence means there is no conflict between evolution and creation, because creation expresses itself as evolution. The infinite field out of which all phenomenal existence arises is the field of consciousness itself, which is inherently compassionate and just, for that love is the ultimate law of the universe. The field, and this statement calibrates at 750 on the map of consciousness. The field and phenomena are one dynamic whole, simultaneously creation and evolution. The field of consciousness, in other terminology, is called the Buddha nature, otherwise known as Christ consciousness, or heart-centered Christ consciousness. The field, the Buddha nature, Christ consciousness, the state of infinite love is always present, awaiting your realization. It is always complete. It does not go from incomplete to complete. It is complete right from the beginning. This is David speaking. When I lay in that snowbank, the state was complete instantly, once and for all. It did not get louder and louder and creep up into my legs. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I was in a totally different realm, and it was beatific. And it goes on to say the only reason he left was because his father had come to find him, and if he had chosen to remain in that love and let his soul move out of his body and into spirit, into that golden, vast, infinite field of golden love, in other words, passing away, then his father would be devastated and blame himself. So that for that reason, David chose to come back into his body to to be with his family, to be with his father. The inner state of the mystic ultimately cannot be described as it transfigures all life like a light come on that illuminates all existence, and the radiance makes it difficult to function. One learns how to live with it in a semi-normal fashion, and indeed, with concentration, you can learn to fool most of the people around the time, looking at them respectfully and saying, "Oh yes, I agree, and that's right." Because most people never know what they are in the presence of, just as they're unaware of their own inner self. So that's obviously what Yeshua felt, and Buddha felt, and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, dealing with the people of their time, because these remarkable souls, these remarkable beings, were of the highest vibration. They were fully united with Source Creator, consciousness, with God, and to deal with humans who were on a very primitive, lower consciousness, of lower vibration, must have been quite challenging at times for them. And I will carry on just now. So, as David says here, in contradistinction to the intellectual approach in religious education, what we are describing here is the inner path. It arises from within. A religious education can set the stage for it, but does not cause it. One can study theology day in and day out, and then that study will not necessarily precipitate an inner spiritual realization. However, if there is an interest in religion, plus a certain motivation, the inner path becomes activated. The great saints of the world, of the past, demonstrate that scriptural study, worship, and the devotion to a belief system can end up as a mystical inner awareness. Suddenly the words dissolve into the realization of the inner truth. They call it unio mystica, the mystical union of self and divinity, a state of divine love. This radical subjectivity may reveal itself as agape. I'll just say, I don't know how you say it. That'll be how I pronounce it. Known itself as agape, which is the lovingness for all existence. Before you get to agape, however, there is the state of unconditional love. At 450, it shows itself as a lovingness for nature, for all people, a sensitivity for the beauty of everything that exists, and a lovingness for all living beings in the animal kingdom. You can love one animal just as easily as another. It is a lovingness for all life and all its expressions. God is the source of all that is, without exception, which calibrates as truth. Everything and everyone are a creation of God. Everything and everyone are part of God, part of the source creator consciousness. Nothing exists that is not a creation of God. As consciousness evolves, divine states are calibrated as follows. The map of consciousness may be viewed as a map of the journey to that ultimate human destiny, which is finally an inner path. Concepts and teachings that calibrate below 600 are comprehensible to the majority of people, and the teachings in the calibration range of the 500s love have a major influence. Although the perfection of love to the level of unconditional love at calibration 540 is reached by only 0.4% of today's overall world population, it is nonetheless comprehended as a real experiential possibility, and exceptional individuals who continue to evolve in consciousness to the high 500s are termed saints, thereby serving as models for humanity as a practical goal. The spiritual ecstasy of the very high 500s is also recorded, for example, documented experiences of Ramakrishna, the Baal Shem Tov, Saint Francis of Assisi, and others, and thereby gives credence and acceptance as a possible reality for those who are exceptionally motivated or gifted. At the consciousness level of 500, there is a major shift of paradigm. Mentation gives way to intuition. Linear causality gives way to nonlinear synchronicity, and external effort gives way to subjective realization. From consciousness level 600 and up, the spiritual reality is described as ineffable or mystical. So I believe I'll end it there. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. It's quite long, 17 minutes, but I hope you will enjoy it. It's and I'm sure you will. All of you out there, all of you searching for enlightenment, for a way to evolve in your consciousness. I hope you enjoyed my words and learned something from them. And credits to Dr. David Hawkins. May he rest in peace.